as a result of poor sanitation. They also noted that both the dormitory and the schools have poor ventilation. The absence of qualified teachers in the sciences and the general shortage of teachers have placed Region 9 in an education crisis. This is further jeopardized by the absence of internet services which were installed by the APNU AFC administration and which has not been maintained. In fact, in some cases, it appears to have been deliberately shut down. All villages which we visited complained about the lack of respect for the indigenous peoples by the current PPP government and the abuse of indigenous peoples. 9, residents across the Rupununi condemned the government for its poor handling of carbon credits and noted that the government blatantly ignored their voices. Residents feel strongly that the government ought to have consulted with them instead of imposing on them the percentage of income that indigenous people should get from carbon credit sales, and therefore the PPP is ignoring their interests and their concerns. 10, alarmingly, the residents of Karasabai, Tiger Pond, and Paipang have reported that they have to wait 6 months for their old age pensions. And may I add that the cost of traveling to Lethem is unaffordable. And very often when people get there, they are told by the officials that there's no money and they need to return. 11, the registration of illegal migrants from Venezuela by GCOM and the bloated voters list are key concerns of the residents of Region 9. The residents concluded that it is time for the government to respect the rights of indigenous peoples by affording them the right to free, prior, and informed consent in relation to matters involving indigenous communities. The leader of the opposition and team responded to many concerns raised by the residents of Region 9. Mr. Norton and team outlined a clear policy for the next APNU AFC government as they focused on putting the people first as the main focus of the people-centered development strategy. The leader of the opposition made it very clear that the purpose of the people-centered development strategy is to deliver to the people of Guyana a high quality of life. In addition, it is made very clear that the intention of the people-centered development strategy is to ensure the development of sustainable villages in Region 9 and across Guyana, and to reduce the differences between the coast and hinterland. Mr. Norton and team identified the key programs that will lead to the sustainable development of Region 9. In outlining the people-centered development strategy, it was made clear that indigenous peoples must have the greatest say in indigenous matters. In this regard, the following was stated that the APNU AFC will: 1, allow the people of the villages to make their own decisions and end political partisan control of village leaders. 2, remove the partisan political control over the National Tushaus Council and allow the people to elect their leaders. 3, increase consultation with the people to amend the Amerindian Act so that it reflects the will of the people, address environmental issues, and allow the people to develop their own policies and programs to address indigenous concerns. 4, govern with respect for indigenous rights, particularly based on free, prior, and informed consent, the right to self-determination, and land rights, among others. 5, develop sustainable indigenous communities that include agricultural development, agro-processing, develop competent contractors and business persons from all indigenous communities, and the provision of local and international training for indigenous peoples, with the aim of making them independent and end the dependency being created by this government and their approach, which is to dominate and control all aspects of life. 6, develop a program to make indigenous languages become the vehicle of choice for education delivery in the formative years of indigenous children, and a program for the development of indigenous youth leadership and entrepreneurship. The focus of policies and programs will be to reduce and ultimately get rid of the differences between the coast and the hinterland and promote the development of indigenous peoples in all spheres of life. The leader of the opposition emphasized that indigenous peoples will be at the center of development in keeping with our people-centered development strategy.
Members of the media, poor management and lack of maintenance of GWA water wells in Region 9. The Minister of Housing and Water, in a Guyana Chronicle News article dated 25th May 2023, carried under the title Region 9, 96% water coverage achieved with $1 billion investment, Minister Crude. The article also captured several villages such as Maronau, Simony, Kwaiko, Rupati, and Fairview, which are among those to benefit from the investment. To date, the residents say that they have no water and the wells are not functioning. This was the cry across almost every community that was visited. Clearly, the minister misled the people of Guyana. For example, in Aishalton, not only the residents, but also the children have no water supply at the schools. In Maranao, the wells is non-functional. In Karasabai, there has been no water supply in some sections. In Tiger Pond, for over 1 year, the residents did not receive any water since the well is non-functional and the pump has fallen into the well. The coalition government during its tenure from 2015 to 2020 drilled at least 48 wells across the hinterland regions, which saw many indigenous communities for the first time receiving potable water. To date, the Guyana Water Inc. has failed to maintain, upgrade many of those wells and drill new ones to better serve the communities, thus causing this significant shortage of water in region number 9. The Minister of Social Protection failed to keep her promise to the residents and neglected the Rupununi villages. The residents of Karasabai, Tiger Pond, and Paipan have reported that the old trend of waiting, of having to have for 6 months their old age pension has returned. The pensioners told the opposition leader that it is now March 2024 and they have not received any pension for the year. In addition, vulnerable women who received social assistance while the coalition was in office are now being denied this benefit under the PPP administration. Further, the residents highlighted that the minister promised over 1 year ago to erect and install flush toilet stations for the elderly and differently abled persons in the communities mentioned above. But to date, not one has been built. Thus, the people continue to operate in extreme insanitary conditions. Thank you.
At this time, we'll take questions on the first statement.
Yeah, sorry. Good morning, everybody.
Morning. Good morning.
Adam Harris here. Sorry, I never raised my hand in time. No, there was a report I saw on social media postings that a major bridge was set on fire. And the suggestion was that this fire tended to limit the ability of the team to visit Amerindian communities. Accurate is that report?
It is accurate, but one needs to go back. From the time we arrived in the Rupununi, the People's Progressive Party has been threatening persons not to attend our meetings. Unfortunately for the PPP, persons were attending the meeting. And so we were of the view that they had finished there. But we saw continuously attempts to intimidate people. In fact, in Aranaputa, they told the 10 days workers, if they, the mother or father, are seen, they will be gotten rid of the 10-day workers. Of course, we had the turnout in Aranaputa, and when dark set, many people came to the fringes to listen. And so they were instilled in fear. But we went to a particular village where the bridge was burnt. I don't remember the name now.
Correct.
Was Karasabai, yes, it was Karasabai. Now, our program stated that we are going to leave Karasabai at 10. So we were preparing, we were about to have breakfast when one of the villagers informed us that a fire was set to the key bridge. We sent out a team to check. When we checked, we recognized, one, the bridge was on fire. When they checked, we were concerned that it might have been a bushfire. But then when we checked, there was no bushfire in the surrounding area. And it was clear that it was set at 2 points, the main beam on the bridgeheads and another point close to the concrete base where there was some wood. Well, not concrete, but or some bricks where there was an upright. Now, we reasoned that they were hoping that by 10, this total bridge would have been on fire and it would have been difficult for us to cross. Now, if you understand, if we didn't get across that bridge, we were in deep trouble because we were using minibuses and ordinary 4x4. And the other routes, I understand only ATV could have used it. So we immediately got together our things and ensure we get across the bridge before. As of this morning, we received the Christian name of the person who actually set the fire. We're trying to get the full information to say to the police, this is our information. You need to investigate. Not that we expect any investigation, but we believe it is our duty to tell them. I know Marvin went in the team that was the advanced team looking at the bridge. So if he wants to add anything, he's free to at this stage.
Thank you, Comrade Leader. The bridge it's over a creek that's dry, and the revetment that holds the road to the bridge, that was completely burnt out. So with a few vehicles traversing the road, it's clear that the dirt road would have collapsed. Even if the bridge wasn't totally burnt, it would have been inaccessible to vehicles. With respect to the Christian name of the person, the people in the Rupununi will know that this is a person whose name has been called and who has been at least once arrested for allegedly committing rape on a minor indigenous person, and who either still holds or once held the CDO's posting. But the attempts to cause people not to attend our meetings extended to a very close relative of a senior, if not influential, PPP operative in Lethem. This young man is also, I'm told, a town councillor in the Mayor and Town Council of Lethem, and he's the supervisor for CDOs in Region 9. Our report says that he was in the process of visiting homes and offering to people reasons why they should not attend our meetings and making suggestions about consequences that would befall them if they didn't. It is alleged that the young man was drunk.
If they did, you said.
Yes, if they did, sorry. It is alleged that he was drunk. He was using a government-owned all-terrain vehicle, ended up in an accident, and was listed as critical in the Lethem hospital. We don't know what his current position is, but that was the mission that he was on. Those are his connections. That's what he was doing, and that's how it ended. And we regret the fact that he was injured and wish him a speedy recovery, notwithstanding the circumstances.
Thank you. I see the hand of Ms. Davina.
Good morning, everyone. This is Davina with Kaiser News. I would just like to follow up on something Mr. Marvin said about oil money not reaching the hinterland people or the communities there. I wanted to know how this conclusion was made, given that oil money is transferred into the consolidated fund and spent nationwide. So I'd like you to please clarify how you would have made that conclusion.
It is not a conclusion that we made. This is what was represented to us by the residents of Region 9. They contend, among other things, that all of the projects, the infrastructure projects taking place in their regions, are undertaken by persons not resident in the region, who take employees not resident in the region, and ignore the labor force that is available in the region. They further contend that there's no emphasis placed on mitigation measures when it comes to the environmental issues and the environmental concerns of the region. Recently, you would know that there were massive bushfires in the mountains of the Rupununi. The Kanaku mountain range and so on were on fire. The savannas were on fire. And the issue really is that indigenous peoples have made over the centuries more sacrifices in the preservation or for the preservation of the natural environment. And they face the harshest sufferings when climate change hits. It is expected, the people expect, that resources will be placed at the disposal of the region for purposes associated with environmental preservation. In addition to all of that, persons who are farmers, and that's the largest economic activity in the region, do not have water supply. One gentleman told me that he had dug a well. He had 3 people along with himself digging a well. They got as deep as 22 feet and found no water. There is no equipment that is being deployed in the region, notwithstanding the abundance of oil wealth in this country and the spending of money in PPP support areas for every concrete strip that is being set up and labeled road in some instances. While the people of Region 9 cannot get water for their cattle, cannot get water for their crops. In fact, water is so critical that wherever it exists, the animals will gravitate towards that meager supply of water. But the very arrow plants that are used to make the shafts for the arrows for hunters, those plants have died as well. These are areas where people believe that government should pay some attention. You have situations where job opportunities are not available. You have situations where persons who enjoyed social security benefits are now denied them. You have situations where the elderly who can't move around on their own have to wait for 6 months for their pensions, the rate of which is way below what is desirable and way below what government can afford to pay and ought reasonable to pay. So these are but examples that demonstrate the people's concern where money is being spent all over the place and they're receiving absolutely none.
I wish to point out that we will be putting in the public domain the videos where these people raise their concerns so that what we say here is corroborated by the comments made in those videos. So you can look forward to the videos coming out because there was an exchange at the end of every meeting where people made their comments, asked their questions, and to see it.
Davina, thank you very much for your question. I just wanted to build off of what the leader Merv said there, in that, there's been studies that have been produced over the years. The most recent one, I believe, was by the World Bank a couple of years ago, which indicated that poverty in Guyana is most severe in our hinterland communities. That's one one important thing to note. And of course, you almost never hear the government speak about poverty altogether, and you don't see them target poverty alleviation in their policies. That's one way that oil monies are not reaching our Armenian people. Another important note is that we saw even the Minister of Education acknowledge that in mathematics, we only saw 17% of Armenian students be able to get a pass. And in fact, none of them were able to get a grade 1. This, I think, is also indicative of the government's lack of investment in those communities, lack of focus, not putting its money where its mouth is. And so the oil monies that are available are not being invested in such critical things as poverty alleviation and education. And of course, one of the most damning examples is what happened with the Mahdia fire, where if that building were properly equipped, and of course, we've got more than enough oil money to do that, we would not have seen the tragedy unfold that did unfold. And so there's a lot of, I think, clear examples and indeed studies that indicate that the Armenian community is not benefiting as it really needs to, given some of the challenges that we face.
I also want to add, if I may, that there is an emerging food crisis in Region 9 as a result of the absence of support to the agricultural sector. Of course, you know that cassava is the staple of indigenous peoples, and the weather is not helpful with the cultivation of cassava this time. The crops have all died or on the verge of dying. And what has worsened the situation is the fact that the cash grants that have been handed out were handed out with a commitment, we are told, that indigenous peoples of the Rupununi need not worry and they shouldn't bother about planting too much because the PPP will bring money and give them frequently. And so some of them have stopped planting. So at the moment, there's a shortage of farine in Region 9, and the shortage is going to worsen given the weather conditions at this time. So there's a need for food in Region 9, and the people of the region are looking to the government to make sure that they ride this crisis successfully.
Adrian?
Yes, sorry. During the press conference, during the opening statements, there was talk about registration of the Venezuelans at other press conferences. Now, we find that Venezuelans are being registered in large numbers. And secondly, at the press, President Jack Deal said that 90 parentage or are Guyanese. The Guyanese, of course, they can be registered, but can this be verified?
Parajak is a fool. They themselves said that the majority of Venezuelans coming over are the Waros. Now, the Waros don't have Guyanese parentage. It is true that there are Venezuelans with Guyanese parentage, and they are entitled to be citizens of Guyana. But the government itself argues, and when they provide information in Parliament, they said that most of them were Waros. And the Waros are not the children of Guyanese. So it must be a fool to now come and say that it is 90% of the persons are Guyanese citizens. I think the PPP's own information that they put out in the Parliament will suggest that they are lying. Because if you are saying to us 90% are Guyanese, you have to explain how is it that the majority, according to your data, are the Warao people. Now, as we look at this issue, we also, the PPPs also want us to focus on the Venezuelans so that they pass other things under our eyes. But we are very vigilant, our people are vigilant. We can tell you, for instance, in Brazil, they went over and bring over Brazilians to register. We are verifying all the information on it. We also know that they are bringing in people from Bangladesh and India, which will generate problems here. The last time I was coming in, you saw government officials going to meet people from Bangladesh and actually bringing them through the VIP lines. And when you check, it is not high officials of the Bangladeshi government. It is Bangladeshi workers that they are bringing. And so I think Barajak Dios talk so much nonsense that he's contradicting everything that he's saying and is coming over like a fool.
Interestingly as well, Mr. Harris, is the fact that the total population of Guyana only now exceeds our voters' roll by 42,000. So Mr. Jagdeo could take some time to explain that to the nation. And you'll recall that the PPP said that there were no Venezuelans in regions 5 and 6, when in fact, the evidence stares you in the face that there are large numbers of Venezuelans in both regions. So, you know, instead of going to Babujan and ranting about what will happen to who challenges the PPP, Jagdeo should sit down and supply the nations with facts in these questions that you've raised.
Question from Mr. Antonio Day from Sabro. He says, as it relates to the woes of the indigenous people in the Rupununi, has the opposition reached out to the Minister of Amerindian Affairs, Pauline Sukat?
Well, from where I sit, I can tell you that none of us gamble, so it might be difficult to meet her.
Look, we were in the Region 9. We have collected information. We will put it in the public domain, and we will popularize these issues. Speaking to the Minister of Indigenous of Amerindian Affairs is a waste of time. She does not address the issues raised. Even in Parliament, when you raise the issue, they're always telling you some garbage and comparing with what happened when we were in government. So it's like a waste of time to ask them. However, I will ask the person for Indigenous Affairs to write her a formal letter, but we don't expect anything from it.
But I can also add that we have put in the public domain a number of issues that are affecting indigenous villages across the country. Wakapo, for example, where there are allegations of impropriety, financial impropriety, totaling the region of $50 million, as alleged by the villagers, I beg your pardon. That information has been put in the public domain with respect to a petition for the removal of the Tushao and councillors. That requires a response from the minister within 3 months. If the minister thinks that there's some credibility in the allegations leveled in that petition, the minister will order investigation. The minister has never responded to that petition, never responded. What the minister did when we made it public is that she sent in a team of auditors from the region, that's region 2. And the villagers are suggesting, they're alleging that there's a massive attempt at covering down whatever is happening in that village. You know, so what is equally interesting in this whole scenario of that particular village is that the Tushao is a nominee of the People's Progressive Party to sit on the Indigenous Peoples Commission. And the villagers feel that they're protecting him so that he can eventually be placed on that commission. There are a number of other villages like Hururu and so on, and Monkey Mountain, where issues have been highlighted publicly, and the minister has taken absolutely no action with respect to that. So I wouldn't hold my breath when it comes to having or take action on any report coming out of Region 9. In fact, immediately as we left Region 9, the PPP started their own outreach exercises. There was very, very small numbers attending those meetings. The last one was held last evening in Lethem. And that too was very, very sparsely attended. So we won't hold our breath, but as the leader said, the information will be supplied.
And mind you, the people in the Rupunun, I don't think expect the government to do anything. They commented on the fact that an RAO, that is PPP, was involved in a shooting incident with a young lady, and nothing happened. Across the region, they remember the allegations of rape against Minister Dharamlal, and they saw the cover-up, so they don't expect anything. I think they are focusing on changing the government.
Yeah, thank you. I just have just maybe two quick questions. Don't want to be cut off like you cut me off last week. My first question is to the representative, the female representative there. Good morning, ma'am. How would you describe females in the community, in the indigenous community there, and especially young female students and so forth, during this high cost of living and the neglect of the PPP regime in the indigenous communities?
Good morning to the media. Good morning to the viewers. That's a very nice question, Mr. Baker. Okay. Indigenous women are vulnerable in all societies. Indigenous women, could I say, are peaceful and quiet people, and lots of people take advantage of them. The women in those villages, they have the potential to develop themselves in becoming independent, but they're not given the opportunity. The young girls are of the same, and like I said, they're not given the opportunity to do so. If they are, there will be better representation, better representatives of their community. However, it is of the view of some villagers that women in the Region 9 make better tuitions because they have the knowledge to manage. They have the knowledge to be accountable to their husbands when the husbands give them money, could I say, to spend. Now, they're saying that we do everything for the country. For example, if we do not multiply, population dies. So the women, they're very enthusiastic of developing themselves. If my answer to your question is correct.
I think there are a few points that should be made from the experience. When you see the videos, you will see a lot of the representation is being made by women.
Young ones too.
And the young women in particular who are accessing social media, they are on top of what is happening. When you see the video at Sarama, you will see a young woman who is very eloquent and representing the issues. But one of the things that are affecting them is the APN UFC place internet hubs across, but the young people in Karasabai complained that they change the password regularly for the Wi-Fi so that they can't access. And one of them was actually told, y'all is only listen to APNU, AFC programs, and so we can't give you access. So there is that attempt to ensure they don't access information. Across the Rupununi, however, what we found interesting was that they knew about all these programs, they knew the actors by name, and there is the development of a consciousness in Region 9 that I think is worrying the government, and that is why Barajak Deo, even before we completed the visit, started to talk a set of nonsense. But all Guyana should know there is an awakening in the Region 9, and even though they are instilling fear and threatening people, we do believe that they have seen through the PPP government. They recognize that they are not serving them. And again, when you see the tape, you will hear their comments.
And might I add, Mark, that a number of women have been trained under the coalition administration in broadcasting. And a number of women, one of them a specialist in languages, among the others, proved to be very progressive in the area of broadcasting, in Ishalton particularly. So at the moment, Ishalton and Lethem radios have been reduced to relay stations of the propaganda of the NCN. And these young women who have been trained are now sidelined. The only radio station that operates with some level of independence is Radio Piomac in the North Rupununi, which is a community-owned radio and which was supported under the coalition in its expansion and so on. But the others and across the country, hinterland radio stations, mostly managed by women, have been reduced to relay stations.
It is also important
Another follow-up question.
just to add, Mark,
In regards to
Mr. Benjamin, 1 second.
just to add to your question, it is important to note that it is a woman who stood up to represent in Suramo and other communities within the Region 9 area, the will of the children to develop, or youths in those communities. Because one of the things she mentioned is that on the coast, the children in school, they're getting to write 12, 14, 15 subjects. In the Rupununi, they're only getting the chance to write about 6 subjects. And at this time in the Rupununi, there's a lack of trained teachers, and most likely, from our explanation, a shortage of teachers in other areas. What that is doing to the children in the Rupununi is that they cannot be able to write subjects past 4. The science area, for example, there are no trained teachers in Suramo, or teachers rather, in Suramo village to teach. The children were told that they cannot write any science subject after they were already registered and paid to write those subjects. The minister, the parents rather, said the ministry told them that they have to now collect their monies, the fees that were paid to CXC already, and the children will not be able to sit those exams. Across in another village, it was a young lady who stood up to represent the youths, and she was so much concerned that she asked about the strike that is presently affecting the nation, and well, most likely might restart in very short order, because she mentioned that the children are at a disadvantage, and it is the development of the youth that is being affected by these actions of the government.
You can go ahead.
appreciate it. But you mentioned earlier what appears to be act of domestic terrorism by the PPP, allegedly by the PPP, with the attempt of burning down of that bridge. And with what Javier said at Babujan, that he would deal with political opponents, that by itself is an interpretation of declaring war on the people of Guyana, those who oppose the PPP. How much is that affecting our indigenous brothers and sisters with those sort of threats and with this recent act of domestic terrorism allegedly by a PPP operative? Mr. Norton?
You know, I don't take Barajak Dio seriously because I expect him to issue a threat. It's the only thing he can do. He's not delivering goods and services to the people. And we are highlighting the fact oil resources aren't meeting the people. We have highlighted the fact that cost of living is killing and the society is feeling it. He also tried to instigate persons to do things so he can bring out the police force. Barry Jagdeo faces a great dilemma. Let me tell you it's what. He has not gotten anything really to blame the opposition for and use it to rally his support base back to the PPP. And so he is not getting the kind of traction he wants. And I think he's going mad. And as he goes mad, he makes these pronouncements. All I would say to Barry Jagdeo is this: nobody's afraid of you. Nobody's afraid of you. And I will say this to you. Your regime killed thousands of people, and there is still action against the regime. I would remind him that Burnham said, if you kill me, one Rasta will take, another Rasta will take my place. And so nobody is afraid of Barry Jagdeo. In fact, I think Barry Jagdeo is afraid of himself. And that is why he behaves the way he behaves. Because there's nobody else in the PPP can do a press conference. Like how we are here and others can talk, only one man got out in the PPP, is Barry Jagdeo. So you are dealing with a man that is going mad. We should not be worrying with him. I saw him saying that the APNU AFC don't get involved in policy debates. I have invited him to debate policy. We have outlined many policy positions, which he failed to respond to because he lacks the capacity to. Barry Jagdeo believes projects, just discrete projects, constitute development. That is not true. You need a proper development plan. You need a proper vision, and he is visionless. Every project that Barry Jagdeo handled in this country has failed. He cannot show any successful project, be it Skeldon, be it Enmore packaging factory, be it fiber optic cable. The man is a complete failure who seeks to control and dominate his political party and believes he can extend that domination to the wider society. Nobody is afraid of Barry Jagdeo. We are aware that he has resources at his disposal. We are aware that he has goon squads. We are aware that he believes that the PPP can do people as they like and get rid of it. But that will not instill fear into anyone. And all of his attempts at instilling fear so far have failed. I saw in today's paper, Ramaya got off of cybercrime. What do you call it? He has charged so many people in the opposition, and they are losing all the cases. So the court is not an option because a lot of the Trump-up charges are being dismissed. And I think now he's resorting to violence. He seems to believe the only people with blood is his opponents. They don't have any.
Thank you. I see the hand of Mr. Adam Hart.
Yes, sorry. Earlier I spoke about Venezuelans, and the Congress leader had said that he was getting data. That's still going on. Are you in a position to say, for example, the percentage of Venezuelan registration for elections? Yeah. Do you have information on a large number of Indian and Bangladeshi nationals being registered for the elections?
Let me start with Indian and Bangladeshis. Remember, the rule says if you're a member of a Commonwealth country and you spend 1 year in the country, you could be registered. We see them bringing them now. It doesn't follow, therefore, that they are registered yet. You will see them, a lot of them, after they would have spent a year. As it relates to the Venezuelans, we know of cases where, at Cartagena, for instance, a number of Venezuelans have been registered. The data there suggests that they weren't significant numbers, but they were registered. The minute we believe that the number is significant to the point where it will affect the outcome of the elections, we will deal with it in the public domain. But we do know they are registering. We do know that some of them are parents of children of Guyanese parents and entitled, but there are some that are creeping in that are not necessarily parents. We know of a case on the East Coast where the PPP was giving them birth certificates. The real problem lies in the government changing the law as it relates to birth certificates. But there is also another phenomenon that is occurring. With one more registration, most likely, once they open back registration, the voters list will be more than the population. So that is something we're keeping our eyes on as well.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed another question. I don't want to get the moderator annoyed. Am I allowed another question, please?
You can go ahead and then I'll take Ms. Williams, whose hand is up.
Thank you so much, Ms. Haynes. I appreciate it. Mr. Norton, have you guys taken action or any sort of the seriousness in what Jack Deal has said at Babuja? We are seeing leaders worldwide, dictators, resort to that sort of threats of violence. It is a serious comment made there by Bharat Jack Deal, basically promising violence against political opponents. Any measures taken by your party to take Jack Deal to the ERC, to report him to the police, the cybercrime? We cannot dismiss him. He cannot be dismissed as easily as that. You know, especially under his regime, Mr. Norton, there's evidence, hundreds of young men being slaughtered and phantom squad and so forth. To have him make that statement and to just ignore him, he should not be ignored. My final question for this morning, and I do promise that it's my final question. Sorry, Adam. It has to do with the promises and the hoodwinking by the PPP regime, starting with the $214 million still missing, the helicopter black box, we haven't heard anything about it, the 20 young students who have died, that has disappeared as well. What's happening and how is the party approaching, the opposition approaching these dead issues, so to speak, by the PPP? And if I can add in a C question there, 120-something thousand extra voters on the list. Please, thank you, Mr. Norton and others. I appreciate it.
Let me start at the bottom. I don't know where you arrive at 120,000. It's far more than that. Extra people on the list. And we have deducted that simply. The government itself keeps saying that there are 250,000 children that they give grants to, etc. If you take 250 away from 750, you have no more than 500,000 on the voters list. The voters list right now is 708,000. That is way past 500,000 or 550, way past. So 120,000 is an exaggeration. It's an understatement. Now, as it relates to writing of the letters, we haven't, but we will. The statement was made while I was in the Rupununi. But there are two ways of dealing with Jack Day. Sometimes when you follow up, he feels he's useful, and sometimes he needs to be ignored. Our information is, and this is historical, a lot of times when Jack Dale feels threatened, he behaves like a madman. Got him busy in freedom oats all around. The information is that he's a coward. And a lot of the statements he would have made come from a coward. It comes from a coward. So one has to look carefully at how to deal with Jack Dale. Jack Dale does not outline policies for this country. And so his first deficiency is the absence of policy approach to development. His approach is projects. Secondly, the PPP and Jack Dale are pushing their constituency away from them because in all of these communities, they put PPP czars. And these PPP czars take advantage of the people. And those people are moving away. Some of them are saying that they wouldn't vote at all. Now, I want to be very clear to you. We have to analyze this situation and not give Jack Doe the opportunity he's looking for. He is looking for a mechanism to get back the support that he would have lost. We have to show that we have better policies and programs. We have to show that he's policy deficient. We have to establish that he's a failure, all of which we're doing. We have to establish that there is no mechanism, they can't deal with the high cost of living. We have to establish that they have no anti-poverty program. We have to show clearly that the oil resources are not meeting the people of Guyana. And we have to establish that they are trying to push us in the direction of a confrontation so that the society can end up in an ethnic conflict. The person who's likely to benefit from an ethnic conflict is Barra Jack Deo and the PPP. Now, the evidence in the Rupununi suggests that even the indigenous votes that they used to bribe, etc., they are rejecting them. And so we will do the right thing as is suggested, but we will not give Barra Jack Deo the opportunity to come up with to get the opportunity to bring back people who he himself would have alienated. So our approach at this stage, if he gets out of hand, we have been mobilizing on the ground from our cost of living rally, etc., and a number of activities. We know we have the capacity to mobilize against the PPP. We will do it, but we will not allow him to get the opportunity that he wants. May I also indicate too, while we do not believe the international community will bring us to power or anything of the sort, we do believe that this is an interdependent world and we need to keep the international community abreast with what is happening. We have been doing that, and a lot of people in the international world, they are seeing the light and know that Barra Jack Deo and the PPP are unfit to govern Guyana.
That apart, the obvious loss of support publicly for the People's Progressive Party and Jack Deo's own growing popularity in the PPP is coming to the fore, and he is attempting to create distractions as the PPP go to an overdue Congress. So there you have it.
Inside the People's Progressive Party, one of the reasons Barra Jack Deo cannot allow anybody else to do a press conference outside of the president now and then, he knows that there are forces within the PPP that are up against him. Of course, we have two different styles of political parties, and so a lot of it wouldn't come out, but our intelligence is saying to us that the PPP is well divided. It is saying to us that there's a battle between Barrett and about two others, and that what you see now, there is a facade that it's a united party. The party is imploding. We do our work and place ourselves in a position to replace the People's Progressive Party.
Thanks for your question there, Mark. There are several sections of it. One thing I wanted to address, and again, I applaud you for making sure this issue remains on the front burner, is the question of the $214 million that's missing, that audit, where we essentially saw the members of the government attempt to, and the PPP claim that they were unaware, write off a huge amount of money that Guyana is entitled to. You may have heard in the course of discussions today some talk about teachers not being paid well in the interior regions, but we've also seen the GRA say that their salaries and the compensation that they're able to offer cannot compete with that offered by the oil companies, especially with regard to their auditors. Now, to me, this is two versions or two symptoms of the same problem, which is that the PPP refuses to provide adequate compensation for public servants. And as a result, on the one hand, you're seeing that you don't have the teachers in the hinterland regions that you should have. If, of course, salaries were higher, you could attract those teachers. But on the other hand, the nation's finances are put at risk by not having the appropriate auditors or having more limited audit capacity than we really should have. So that is something that we should note. As it concerns Jagdeo, one thing I would say is, you may recall a couple of press conferences ago, we issued a challenge to Jagdeo that he should stop saying who did this and who did that and who said that. That is to say, focusing on personalizing issues when he's talking, rather than focusing on policies and on arguments. And only a short while after, you heard Jagdeo now saying that he's going to deal with opponents, which to me sounds like he's gone in the opposite direction. What Guyanese need to do is to ask themselves whether they want to live in a country where the leader of the party that's in office is speaking to people in that way. To me, it is wholly and totally unacceptable. And I think any right-minded Guyanese should condemn that kind of talk.
Since you're basically out of time today, I'll take the two questions, one from Ms. Williams, who will go first, and I will ask Kaitra News to identify one of the persons whose hand is up to ask the final question. Ms. Williams.
Okay, hi, good morning, Trina Williams, Gather Chronicle. Mr. Martin, I have a question for you. Has the party decided on a date for Congress? Do you believe a further delay in holding Congress could discourage members to the extent that they lose confidence in the party's leadership? And my follow-up is, have any of the party's members expressed an open interest in running for the leadership of the PNC? I also had a question for Mr. Mervyn, so I'll ask it one time. You mentioned earlier that nothing is being done. The budget debates, opposition MP Don Hastings had acknowledged the government's support to Indigenous people in the education sector, and it was disclosed last year that hinterland water supply increased from 6% to 82% within 3 years under this current administration. People living within hinterland communities have seen development.
Let me start with Party Congress. I've said regularly that the Party Congress will be held no later than the 31st of August, and the executive will announce when the Party Congress will be held. Lose confidence in the party. What I'm seeing in the party is increased confidence. I went to the Rupununi, and the party was active all across the country. If you go on the East Bank, when I became leader of the party, we didn't have an organizational structure in the East Bank. We now have an organizational structure on the East Bank. So it is evident that the confidence in the party is increasing. You would agree that when I became leader of the party, the international community was not engaging us in the way that They should have. We have changed that, and the international community has been engaging us. We are outlining our positions and policy positions to them. So it is evident that there is an increase in support for the party, and that people who immediately after the 2020 elections were despondent are now rearing and ready to go. As it relates to whether there are persons who exercise interest, I heard somewhere in the press that one person said if they are nominated, they will run. Now, let me say this to you. Our party has been democratic, continues to be democratic. We held our last Congress in 2021 to the end of the year, and all the hullabaloo about violation of the Constitution. There is no violation of the Constitution. This party over the years have held a biennial conference, and there were times when you could not, there was no time that it was held exactly under 2 years. And so it will be held before August, which will be in keeping with the Constitution. I am aware that there are a number of people who are paid by the People's Progressive Party to make this an issue. But anybody who goes back to the history of the PNC will see that we held our biennial Congress on time, especially when we were in government. But when we were in opposition, the tendency has been to hold it a little off of the schedule, though before the next biennium. So I see no problem there. And people in this party are free to contest in an election, unlike the People's Progressive Party. Let me remind you, 35 people would make Barry Jackdale and Irfan Ali president and leader. In our party, 1,000+ members voted for me to become leader of the PNC. And may I say this to you, I became leader of the PNC with the overwhelming support of the party against persons who exercise their right. And I am convinced that when the Congress comes, I will be re-elected as leader to be a thorn in the side of the People's Progressive Party. I am aware that the People's Progressive Party does not want me as leader because they cannot find anything illegal. They can't challenge my integrity. And I could continue to ask Barry Jackdale and Irfan Ali to put the wealth they have against their income. And if it could match up, I will resign. They are so corrupt that the resources they have extend way past their capacity to earn. And I can say to you, you could check on everything I have. It is backed by loans and my salary and no evidence of corruption. And so I know they are paying people and people are talking about some corruption. I can say to this nation, I can say to all party persons, I'm involved in no corruption whatsoever. I will continue to stay like that because I believe that is my strength against the corrupt PPP regime. And all the rumors that being spread about how much money we are getting in the party, I want to say this very clear. This party, since I am leader, has not received from any big businessman some of the monies the PPP are talking about. We have been managing this party on the resources from our membership and small business supporters. And we do believe that we should continue on that trend, because one of the problems when the big PPP supporters support you is that when you get power, they want everything at the expense of our support base and the wider society. We do not intend to do that. Now, it is obvious to me that Jackdale swore that he was going to destroy the PNC. He has never succeeded. He will never, ever succeed. And I'm saying to you, we are a strong party. We will go to the Congress, our membership will vote, and we will continue the fight against the People's Progressive Party.
And in response to the questions directed to me, I will say that I do not recall ever saying that nothing has been done for Region 9. But if that is your assessment, I would want to thank you for your assessment, because that is the view of many, many people, particularly those in Region 9. With respect to what you alluded to about MP Don Hastings having said in the Parliament, I have not heard what MP Hastings Williams has said, and therefore I'm not in a position to comment on it at this time. But if you send me the information, I will respond to you. With respect to the increase in water supply, I don't know if you joined our press conference late, but this matter has been dealt with in the statement. And the fact of the matter is that the wells that were drilled under the AP and UAFC administration are being neglected. Some have fallen into disrepair, and this administration is paying absolutely no attention to them. No effort is being made for adequate maintenance. In fact, I'll go so far as to tell you that in Sand Creek, where there was a huge opening ceremony under the AP and UFC for water supply, the primary targets for water supply piped into the premises and homes were the children, the elderly, who were in some instances shut in. They got water into their homes. The schools and the dormitory facilities were targeted, the health centers were targeted, and that was the general approach of the AP and UAFC administration. You don't just simply drill a well and put a standpipe and say that 5,000 people are benefiting from water supply. That's absolute trash.
Before you go, and I want to say, I don't know where the reporter got her information from, but I sat in that parliament and heard Dawn Hastings said that she was a proud product of the PNC education system and hinterland scholarship. That is what I heard.
Also, Ms. Williams, it is your very news agency, the Guyana Chronicle, that reported on the 25th of May, 2023, that saying the Minister of Housing and Water said $1 billion was invested in that year to bring accessibility of water in the hinterland, particularly Region 9, from 46, and not 86, but to 96%. He mentioned that in Marano, Simony, Kwaiko, Rupati, Fairview, and some other communities, that they will be first-time beneficiaries of water. I want to tell you from our visit, it is quite evident that when you move across Parishara, Napi, Yupokakari, Hawaii, Achiwib, Aishalton, Shio, Tiger Pond, Karasabai, Paipan, Anai Central, and you can continue to name them. Each and every one of these communities, the people mention that they have difficulty accessing water, and in most of the cases, they have no water and the wells are out of operation. Further to that, we have the videos that will show and prove to you that it is not the AP and UAFC or Norton and his team coming to tell you that the residents are not receiving water, but it is the residents themselves who are coming to us out of a meeting where we communicated, exchange, telling what we will do as a government, and them saying their challenges. You will see it, and then the Kaichua News, sorry, not the Kaichua News, the Guyana Chronicles, and the Minister of Housing and Water could then refute the claims of the people.
Additionally, I think you should ask the minister what happened to the $1 billion, because it's nowhere close to 96% access of water in the region.
Additionally, ask Mr. Kroll, why was the rig that was bought specifically for Region 9 and hinterland regions removed? Where is it? What purpose is it serving? Is it serviceable? These are the questions you need to ask him.
Okay, first and foremost, regarding the article that I'm referencing with the hinterland water supply is from January the 6th, 2024, not last year. Secondly, Don Hastings was quoted saying, I can also recall approaching the Minister of Education, whom I have great respect for, Priya Manichan, about the teachers who were enrolled to do online courses. but were unable to do so in my region, specifically in Upper Mazaruni. I am much appreciative that she came. That is to bring them out of Georgia to attend classes at CPCE.
Your response crucifies your argument. There is no access in the region. You say now that she brought them out. Thanks for clarifying.
And further, may I add that the People's Progressive Party punished a group of teachers who came out of Region 7 who were refused A, support for payment for data plans on the Digicel phones, B, refused transfers to Bartica, where they could benefit hopefully from internet services, and they came out to the coast, notwithstanding the refusal of the administration to facilitate them. They were threatened with dismissal, and they were sent back to the Desiree Fox Secondary School in Waramadan. Is this the way that the government is assisting hinterland teachers? What is the situation with the internet facilities that were put in place by the AP and UAFC administration? Why are they not being maintained? Why are they not being expanded to include a wider cross-section of users?
I see, Ms. Williams, a reduction in the percentage of accessibility to water from the statement in May 2023 that the minister is saying 96%, and you now saying in January 2024 it will go to 86%. It clearly shows that the PPP government is not serious about the development of our people. It also tells me that the minister himself does not know what are the affairs and how much GWI is doing when it comes to the true accessibility of water to our people. When the people of Tiger Pond having a well that a pump has been dropped in for over 1 year, and 600 residents cannot receive water from since last year to now, it is time that Colin Cole tells Sheikh Bashir pack his bag, resign, and leave GWI. That is what they should be reporting on at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Davina, I will take one question from you to close off. We are way over our time today.
Thank you. Mr. Norton, Vice President Jagdeo said yesterday that government cannot prevent trained public servants who want to leave to earn higher salaries in the oil sector. Can you say what are your thoughts on this? And finally, if I may be allowed, please, sir, as leader of the opposition, you have not been very vocal in the oil and gas sector, the main driver of this country's economy. Sir, this is very concerning to citizens of this country, as it seems you have no views on the management of the industry. So we've seen today also that the format of the wide range of issues from being raised and limits reporters to questions only on your concerns, unlike what obtains at every other political press conference. Sir, you've also not been reachable via calls or messages. Can you say how do we then expect government to be held accountable?
First of all, let me deal with the lie that I have not been reachable by calls. You called me many times and got me. I'm not talking about the last week. The last week I was in the interior where I could not be accessed because there wasn't internet on many occasions. I think the young lady from Stabrook News, I think it's Thomas is her name, I don't remember. She calls me and get me regularly. Travis Chase calls and get regularly. The same boy Day calls and get regularly. So I dismiss your view that I am not accessible. And you yourself got me many times. There was a time when Ms. Wilberg used to call. She hasn't called recently, and she used to get me. So that is what I'll say there. The other thing about the oil and gas, I've made numerous comments on oil and gas. I want to say again that oil and gas is not the only issue the opposition has to deal with. Cost of living has to be dealt with. Poverty has to be dealt with. Education has to be dealt with. And so I have been addressing a plethora of questions across the board on this issue. And I've addressed oil and gas matters before. If you go back to your own stuff, Kaicho News, you will see my views on this question that you ask about trained person. One, I do believe professionals have the right to go to whichever industry they want to. That's a fact. However, the problem is not solely that. I said before at press conference, one of the failures of the government is that they're not training enough people to have the technical competence to deal with the oil and gas sector. That Guyana is now an oil and gas country. There should have been far more training so that you have a wider pool of person to select from. One expects that those persons would be in demand. But also the government is failing to address the question of salaries. If you pay the pittance you pay, why do you believe professionals can stay with you when Exxon is offering more? We have to make the salaries competitive. You can't tell people wait till 2027 to benefit from oil and gas. You have to invest now. You have to create a core of people. I argued right here at this press conference, and it was carried by Kaicho News, that we need to improve our capacity to audit and that we should train people to audit. I don't understand, my dear, how you will come now and say we have not been pronouncing on, I, Aubrey Norton, have not been pronouncing on oil and gas matter. I have said here that the agreement, the PSA has a mechanism for us to engage ExxonMobil and ensure the people of Guyana benefit. But there seems to be a thing which says, if you don't join certain people in saying, renegotiate and ring fence, you ain't saying anything. We have to determine what is suited for the people of Guyana and what is suited for us. And we have done that. We appreciate the fact that Kaicho News is on a crusade for renegotiating. We have no problem with them doing that. We choose our language because we will be the government, and we have to be far more careful than a newspaper can be. Now, a newspaper has the right to have its interests. It could say what it wants, when it wants, how it wants, but it does not have the right to dictate what we see. We are formed by the people of Guyana. Now, sometimes when you listen, it appears as if from this PSA, Guyana's got nothing. The money that is being spent, however flawed you think the PSA is as a result of the PSA that the APNU AFC put in place, and the people of Guyana are benefiting from it. And we are proud of the fact that we did work and ensure there is a PSA. That doesn't mean that we believe it doesn't have flaws. It has. We have outlined a mechanism to deal with the flaws. But we are not one who believe that nothing is being had from this arrangement with Exxon. We would like to have more. But it has brought resources to this country that the PPP is misusing. And we don't only want to see an increase in resources, we want to see transparency and accountability. And so we have outlined many positions. We said 6 months, no later than 6 months after we become the government, we will engage Exxon with the aim of getting more out of Exxon. We said we didn't opt for just speeding up exploration. We wanted to do it in a structured way. All of those things we have said. So to say we have not said anything on oil and gas I don't want to describe it as disingenuous, but I think you should review Stabrook News and see. The only thing we can be accused of is not saying we will renegotiate, which we don't intend to say because we don't believe it's the best language for a government in waiting. And on ring fencing, we say we believe in principle on ring fencing, but we will look at each case before we decide where to ring fence. And so I think that is a more sober analysis of the opposition on these issues.
Thank you.
Please, on the issue of renegotiation, you said after your party is elected that you would engage the operator for more benefits for Guyanese. But sir, if your party is never elected into government, are you saying that we as Guyanese people will not see more revenues from that sector? Or we cannot, your party will not do anything unless it goes into government?
I don't follow your logic, but I don't agree with your conclusion. The Guyana government at present can use the same clause we are talking about and engage ExxonMobil and get more from it. So for you to, what you just said is a non sequitur. The fact that we said that we will use the clause to conclude that if we are never in government, then the people will get nothing really defies logic. Because if the government does just what we said, then what will happen is the people will get benefit because they use the clause in the agreement to get more out of it. So again, I would question the logic.
Davina, I just want to point out something specific here. I think we're really burying the lead here. Now, Jagdeo issued a call for anyone to provide him with a plan or way to get more out of this oil contract. We have seen him, therefore, abandon what he's been saying all along, which is contract sanctity and you can't engage the operator and so on. He's abandoned that line of argument. We have pointed out that he has put forward himself a PSA, which can be a starting point for any additional talks. Now, really, that means that since that PSA had to deal with all the concerns and constraints that he's talking about, that there is no barrier existing for him to go and speak to the oil companies, none whatsoever. And so it is only a choice of Jagdeo and the PUP not to try to engage these operators, not to speak to them at all to get better for Guyana. They have no interest, and I think if you press him on it, you will find that he does not have any substantive, any realistic argument to now defend himself. His last argument was contract sanctity, which he has dropped. And we have put forward, to me, an argument which he cannot come back with. So if you speak to him now, you will find that he has nothing to say to defend himself. To me, that means that is the way that this should be approached. And I think that there's a lot that can be done in that regard. Jagdeo must now say why he refuses to speak to the operators on this issue. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to point out is the government keeps trying to make this argument that they can't afford to pay workers. They're talking now about auditors. They can't make them stay. Now, as the lady just said, if you pay auditors appropriately, they will be able to stay. I just want to point out something Jagdeo said. He said that teachers have received from 2015 to now a 50% increase. But from 2015 to now, the budget increased by over 400%. So what is happening is the government, by many measures, is underpaying public servants, and auditors are just one example. I think you'll find it if you paid the auditors at the GRA 418% more, they would stay.
The opposition leader here on securing greater benefits for Guyanese. Mr. Norton, just for clarity, you stressed the fact that government can engage the operator, but sir, what are you doing at your end to ensure the citizens of Guyana benefit more from this deal, even before you are elected as president?
Every time we meet ExxonMobil, we make our concerns known. I can tell you, at one time, people complained to us about the salaries there. We raised it. The head said he will address it. We have raised our concerns. We don't go into a meeting when we meet ExxonMobil and agree with them. Let us recall that when ExxonMobil was going along with the pipeline, we made a proposal which said, and we put it to ExxonMobil, that we should explore the possibility of ISO containerized gas. ExxonMobil, in the last meeting we had with them, show a clear indication that they are now willing to consider it. The first round they weren't. And so again, we have engaged them, but I must say to you, we have the right to choose our language. We don't have significant differences with Kaicho News. In fact, we like Kaicho News. We think they are doing a good job. But that does not mean that we have to agree with everything the Kaicho News says. The Kaicho News has its own constituency that it is targeting, its own interests. And so, while we like the Kaicho News, while we like the job they're doing, while we respect the journalists in Kaicho News, we have a mind of our own. We have to pursue the interests of the people of Guyana. And we have chosen the language we think suits what we set out to achieve for the people of Guyana. And so, my dear, we're not at variance over the general principle that Guyanese need to benefit more. We probably disagree on the approach to achieving that objective. And in life, many times, we will have the same objectives, but go through different routes. Some people get rich by thieving, a normal thing in government. But do we want to have a better quality of life? But do we have to use the same route as the government? No. We can stay within the law, develop ourselves, and improve our lives. And we would have arrived at the same thing, a high quality of life, but not through corruption. So all of us will pursue the interests that we think are the interests of the Guyanese people. But we might use different routes to do it. I read recently a comment which said essentially that the opposition is saying nothing about the present cost of living. We were in my 2021 budget presentation. I made a number of proposals to deal with the high cost of living. I repeated them in 24. Yet somebody will write that we have said nothing on this question of the cost of living. The APNU AFC has been in the forefront of demanding the cost of living be dealt with. In fact, my major criticism of the 2023 budget was that it didn't deal with poverty, it didn't deal with the high cost of living. I made proposals. We did the same thing in 2024. And now a lot of people are joining it, and people tend to forget that it was the opposition that was in the forefront. I remember one time Kaicho News saying that we only focusing on cost of living, etc., and they laugh off of it. But we think it's a serious matter. And even if you increase the oil resources and they're not going to the people, then still we wouldn't be satisfied. I want to see the resources go to the people.
I'm very happy to deliver this issue, but please permit no follow-up. Just for clarity, not doing more.
Marina, 1 second.
You're in charge, but if you leave me, I would have left. And
We
listen to the
are
question.
actually way over time today with another program coming up. And I just also wanted to point out, usually at our press conferences, we have the segment in most cases where we allow for questions on the press statement, and then it's open. We rarely not have the open segment. I just wanted to note that because it was a comment made earlier. I'm very sorry that we have to close up now, but next press conference, we'll try to ensure that we have much more time for the remaining questions. I want to thank all our media personnel for joining the press conference today, and of course, all our listening viewers on all of our social media platforms. Do have a wonderful afternoon.